lesson from this crisis is that we are not sufficiently prepared to deal with health threats. We need to strengthen the current system of international health security. France has made proposals on this, particularly with Germany and its other partners more broadly. We support this strengthening of the World Health Organization, which is the sole universal health organization. And that is why we have made a contribution, additional contribution of 50 million euros to WHO for 2020-2021. More specifically, we would like to see an intermediate alert system established so that the WHO can sound the alert earlier. We would also like to see more transparency and accountability on the part of states parties to the international health regulations. An international inquiry is underway, and we must learn all possible lessons from it. And it will most likely be necessary to review the international health regulations in order to become more effective in this respect. Third lesson is that the public health crisis underlines the interaction between human, animal, and environmental health amid the deterioration of ecosystems. And that is why we support the creation of a One Health Council of high-level experts tasked with collecting and disseminating the scientific information available on the links between human, animal, environment, and environmental health in order to assist public officials in managing future health crises and inform citizens about these issues. I am pleased that the World Health Organization, OIE, FAO, and UNEP are working to create this council in a spirit of partnership with all the major international organizations in these sectors. But beyond health issues, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a major humanitarian impact. It has increased poverty and inequality. According to the United Nations, 235 million people will need humanitarian assistance in 2021, and the number of people in need of food assistance has never been this high. In this respect, I commend the essential action of all of the United Nations agencies and programs and their staff who work every day alongside the most vulnerable people on the planet, at times risking their lives. I would also like to recall that it's more crucial than ever to ensure humanitarian workers access to the people they're seeking to help. The exceptional circumstances generated by the pandemic threaten, in many countries, the achievements of the more than 70-year-long international fight for human rights. The pandemic must not be used as a pretext for restrictions on civil society, erosion of the rule of law, attacks on the freedom of expression, or the arbitrary detention of opponents. It cannot be used as an excuse to undermine the progress made in fighting violence against women, in access to sexual and reproductive rights and services, and in protecting our children. And because we cannot tolerate such backsliding, we are organizing the Generation Equality Forum in 2021. Please join us so that we can together champion the cause of gender equality. Lastly, our role is to prevent further excesses in the brutalization of the world during this crisis, which is far more than just a public health crisis. The Security Council took into account the destabilizing effect of pandemics very early, in 2000 with HIV, and once again in 2014 and 2018 with Ebola. That was the case. And that is why, when the COVID-19 pandemic broke out, we put forward Resolution 2532 together with Tunisia. This was unanimously adopted by the Security Council on the 1st of July 2020 in support of the Secretary General's call for a global ceasefire. I would like to commend in this regard the men and women working in United Nations operations who continue, despite the difficulties, to defend peace and also to combat COVID-19. Here are some of the deeply held beliefs that I wanted to share with you today, and I wish you much luck and progress in your work, and I hope that you will all come out of this pandemic more united and stronger. I thank you.
I wish to thank the President of the French Republic for the statement he just made, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela to introduce an address by the head of state.
Madam Vice President, Your Excellencies, it is my honor to present the pre-recorded statement of the President of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, His Excellency Nicolás Maduro Moros at the occasion of the 31st special session of the General Assembly on the comprehensive response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you.
Señor Presidente.
President, allow me to convey our gratitude for the convening of this important presidential summit in the context of our General Assembly. This summit pertains to the global response to address this human crisis brought about by the coronavirus. I would also like to thank the non-aligned movement for promoting the convening of this session in the midst of such difficult circumstances for humanity. I would also like to take this opportunity to pay tribute to the more than 1.3 million souls who have lost their lives to this disease. For them, we must commit to improve our health systems and to ensure that they are genuinely public and of high quality, available to all. I would also like to express our full gratitude and thanks to the army of health professionals, scientists, and all of those who have been working with such devotion and sacrifice in this struggle to save human lives. We would also like to take this opportunity to recognize the leadership role played by the World Health Organization, the WHO. President, after many months in which the entire world was caught off guard by the health emergency triggered by this pandemic, the worst for 100 years, which, as we all know, has brought to light the major vulnerabilities not just of developing countries, but also of some of the wealthiest and most powerful countries in the world. We have seen at this time that multilateralism is the answer. It must be coordinated. We have seen that solidarity and cooperation must once again play their role that they once did in guiding international relations between countries of the world. However, today they are overshadowed as a result of isolationism, supremacy, and selfishness shown by some powerful minorities who, like elites, dictate policies from the most powerful countries in the world. In Venezuela, our response to COVID-19 has been characterized by bravery and the heroism of thousands of men and women who, under the unified leadership shown by the institutions of our national government, even in spite of a criminal aggression and permanent threat against Venezuela, nevertheless have been able to put all of their material and human resources on the line for our fatherland to serve the people with devotion, discipline, and a great deal of fondness. To date, we have some 100,000 positive cases in our country. 95% of those have successfully recovered. Around 900 people have died of the disease, which means that the fatality rate is 0.87%, which is perhaps one of the lowest rates in our region and the world. Thanks to our policies, our humane policies based on solidarity, ensuring comprehensive hospital treatment, we have been able to care for more than 98% of those who have contracted coronavirus. They have been treated free of charge, with all the medicines guaranteed. It is beyond doubt that we are living in a time at which solidarity is of paramount importance. These should be times of peace, cooperation, and human dignity. However, in spite of these harsh circumstances for the world, some powerful countries of the North have continued with their policy to politicize the pandemic. They have made it into an additional opportunity to impose their hegemonic interests through economic, commercial, and financial aggression. The criminal blockade and economic persecution that has been leveled against Venezuela has led to more than $40 billion being frozen. This belongs to the Venezuelan people, but it has been frozen in banks in the US and Europe, and it prevents us from accessing accounts to pay for medicines that our people needs. It prevents us from accessing primary sources of medicines, medical equipment, as well as purchasing fuel and purchasing materials to produce fuel, as well as food and many other basic services. All of these sectors have been affected by this criminal persecution that has been leveled against Venezuela from the US. It is time for the major powers to stop these measures, to lift these criminal measures, all the more so when we bear in mind that their use is illegal. President, it is crucial that the vaccine or vaccines to address coronavirus be declared by the United Nations and by the World Health Organization as global public goods. This pandemic will only be overcome through a joint response from humanity, and this based on science. Venezuela has begun the protocols before the World Health Organization to ensure for the DR10 antigen to be certified. This was recently discovered in our country. It has curative properties to address COVID-19. We have convened nations into an alliance to ensure that it can be produced on a large scale once it has been approved. Solidarity and unity between peoples is the most powerful weapon against coronavirus, and it is our responsibility to history and to future generations not to waste this opportunity to bring about a better world for all. Thank you very much indeed, President.
I wish to thank the President of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela for the statement just made, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Philippines to introduce an address by the head of state.
Madam Vice President, I have the honor to introduce the pre-recorded statement of His Excellency Rodrigo Roa Duterte, President of the Republic of the Philippines.
Mr. President, COVID-19 pandemic has exposed the fragility of our societies and institutions. Our immediate responses were necessary, yet have driven our societies apart. When everyone needs the same limited resources, the compulsion to resort to a zero-sum approach is amplified. Yet this pandemic demands the opposite response: enhanced cooperation. Our first priority is to strengthen the capacity of health systems. Without a cure and a vaccine, we can only delay the spread of the disease while we reopen our economies. Life-saving services and products must be made accessible to the most vulnerable, the most to the least. Philippines reiterates the call for universal access for safe and effective COVID-19 vaccines and technologies. If any country is excluded by reason of poverty or strategic unimportance, this gross injustice will haunt the world for a long time. It will completely discredit the values upon which the United Nations were founded. We cannot let this happen. No one is safe unless everyone is safe. The Philippines strongly supports global medical and scientific initiatives forged at the WHO. This includes the ACT Accelerator, the COVAX facility, and the CTAP. Together with our brothers in ASEAN and the non-aligned movement, the Philippines supports a global health agenda with adequate resourcing and policy space for WHO. The Philippines will do its part. We will contribute to the pooling of global resources and help other countries without preconditions. Our collective initiatives in the UN and other multilateral frameworks are our best chance to defeat COVID-19. Mr. President, the challenges posed by the pandemic go beyond health and economy. In many parts of the world, the pandemic has worsened the threats to peace and security. The lawless weaponized this health crisis, they crippled the state's ability to respond. They leave COVID-19 to wreak its worst on the population. This is an inconvenient truth, but one that we must face head on. The Philippine support of Secretary General's report for global ceasefire is most welcome and appreciated. The Philippines wants to ensure the swift and unimpeded provision of medical care for all Filipinos, especially the most vulnerable. Yet combating terrorism is just as urgent as now, as it was before the pandemic. In my country, this fight is about protecting life while preserving the democratic values we have restored without violence. Mr. President, the end of this pandemic is still difficult to see. Yet the broad outlines of the horizon are breaking through. It is never too early to think of a bouncing back strategy. The Philippines aims for a comprehensive and inclusive recovery with no one left behind. We are using all available socioeconomic instruments to protect our hard-won gains in development. Our recovery plan is built on solid macroeconomic and fiscal fundamentals, with a funding allocation equivalent to 9.1% of GDP. Let us seize this opportunity to establish a new normal, using lessons from the crisis. Lockdowns have forced us to take full advantage of technology and innovation. It has sped up the adoption of e-commerce, e-learning, video conferencing, and artificial intelligence. Inadvertently, this pandemic has opened greener and more resilient pathways to growth and development. It has also laid bare how interconnected our societies have become. Now is the time to further strengthen our networks of solidarity and cooperation. Mr. President, the time is now for greater collective courage, meaningful actions to see the end of this pandemic. With the path clear, we see how far we can go working with each other and how much we can achieve when we act not as separate nations, but one humanity. There is simply no other way for our United Nations. Thank you.